Okay. And it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tell the Damn Story with legendary writer, producer, actor, child saver, Alex Simmons, and me, Chris Ryan, a hybrid author and small publisher of a growing dream. And today we are going to talk about that dream with the help of our good friend and frequent Tell the Damn Story guest, the one
get the title
Teal
right.
James Glenn. There you go. I got so excited I couldn't get all of the names out. There you go. What's up, Teal? How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. You should recognize my background.
I love how his housing keeps changing while we're talking.
Well, I used to teach online, and I would do that to keep my students awake. I would just flip.
That actually looks like the Denver airport to me.
It is.
You're a mean
I
man.
never got away. I never got out.
Teal and I, Alex, and Carol Geisander were marooned in Denver after the Stoker Con, and it was like 3 days of going back and forth to that. What it looks like a friendly place, but we couldn't get out. It was crazed.
It was a Twilight Zone episode like that. So
It really was. It very much felt like one.
While my heart is calming down, let's find out from Alex how he's doing. Alex, how are you?
I'm fine. Funny you should ask. I'm really excited to be here this evening, this afternoon, this morning, whenever it is you guys are listening to this show, because my buddy Chris here has been working on the project of the century, which is to create, with a bunch of an erratic group, an eclectic group of writers,
35.
a collection of horror stories that sort of run this amazing gamut of genres and backdrops and settings. And to do it all in 24 hours, no, something pretty close to that. He's done it in a really compressed period of time. And you guys are going to have an opportunity to get a little taste of some of the wonderful stories in that. And starting with this writer up here who's now on another planet.
Yes.
Teal has a story in it. I have a story in it. And you're going to be, over the next few episodes, you're going to be meeting other authors who contributed to this masterpiece called Scream
Antholozine actually has.
Did he just step on our build-up?
No, it was beautiful.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm building on that. It actually has 3 appearances by you, Alex, and 4 by Teal, because one of them in Scream Antholozine, this cover right here, if you're watching on YouTube, the Led Zeppelin 4 of our episodes or volumes of Scream Antholozine has no title on the cover, blue cover. But in that issue, not only did Teal have the story, and I think and Alex and Teal doubled up on an interview about great heroines of TV and film from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, and on.
Female heroes as opposed to any substance that somebody might be thinking at this point. Just to be clear about that.
Wow. There you go.
Yes, just be very clear.
I did not know that had a gender, but okay, Alex. So let's talk a little bit about Teel James Glenn.
Yes.
I'm going to do that I'm going to read a couple of things because it's so well phrased.
Are you going to read something about Teal?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to listen.
Teel James Glenn has killed hundreds and has been killed more times on stage and screen as he has traveled the world for 40 plus years as a stuntman, fight choreographer, swordmaster, jouster, illustrator, storyteller, bodyguard, actor, and haunted house barker. I love that all of that description and all of that resume building, and you hold back on the writer because that comes down later on. He has appeared in all of the New York soap operas and Spencer for Hire and in more movies that show up on Showtime and Cinemax than he wants to admit. And now his stories have been printed in over 100 magazines, from Weird Tales, Mystery Weekly, Pulp Adventures, Spine Tingler, Sci-Fan, Mad, Black Belt, Fantasy Tales, Pulp Empire, Sivbosa, Sherlock Holmes Mystery, Sci-Fan again, Crimson Streets, Afterburn's science fiction, and Blazing Adventures. His novel Cowboy in Carpathia, a Bob Howard adventure, won the best novel in 2021 in the Pulp Factory Awards, and he is also the winner of the 2012 Pulp Arc Awards for Best Author. You can find him at theurbanswashbuckler.com, ladies and gentlemen.
Do that one again. The Urban what?
Swashbuckler.
The Urban Swashbuckler.
Swash.
.com. Okay.
Um,
You don't hear
Yes.
that too often. Yes.
No, and that's one of the things that's so much fun. I always tell Teal that he is just the adventure biography of all time waiting to happen, because he's done so many things in so many ways, all of them to deal with adventure and
Man deserves his own
Fights
TV
and
series. That's all.
yeah.
I can say.
It reads better than it lived. I will say, on Spencer for Hire, I got to call Hawk a clown.
See,
And
now
they
that's
paid a price though.
that's the thing that caught me, because I was a big Spencer for Hire fan, and so now I gotta find out what episode that was and to go hunt it down.
it's the Thanksgiving episode with
Of course it
David
is.
Crow. And
What season?
it's season 3. I think.
Okay.
Might have been
Okay.
season 2, but I think it's season 3. But
Okay.
what's cool is that Avery Brooks shows up on the set. I'm there ahead of him. He shows up on the set, and I think, gosh, he's dressed so cool. And then he goes into his trailer and changes into his Hawk outfit. Just as cool. But he was just so awesome. I had very little interaction with him, but man, just let the impression. I
That
love
was
the
cool.
books. And
Yeah, big fan.
get
of the
on
book.
that show. And then I got to meet Parker, and he autographed the book for me. When I told him about it, he autographed the book. Hawk was lucky.
That's so cool.
And I'm like, I want to have that on my gravestone. Because
I met him very late in his career, and I asked him about breaking in, and he just keep writing.
I'll tell you, if the difference between his first Spencer book and the second is literally night and day.
Oh yeah,
And the second is where it really starts. He can
Yeah.
figure it out by then and introduces Susan,
right.
and then it's just falling off a log for him.
Yeah, the first 4 were
Yeah.
the iconic Spencer for me. Looking for Rachel Wallace was the stand.
And Catskill
absolutely.
Eagle.
I'm
sort of-
Gentlemen, I'm going to rein you in because we're here to talk about
Sorry.
Soul Scream and Teal's work. So let's
Well,
do that.
It's just an
anyway.
example of the
Believe
kind
me,
of
Parker's
energy
already covered.
that
He's
Teel
taking
James
care.
Glenn pulls us into, that enthusiasm. And when I started talking to Teel and to Alex, of course, about Soul Scream Antholozine, the thing is, both of you couldn't wait to help. And
It's a brilliant idea.
oh.
Just the word antholozine should make you famous for the annals of time going forward.
I love the idea of anthologies, and I love the idea of writer magazines. Whenever I read a short story, I want to know more about that writer immediately, right?
Yeah.
And you usually get a little paragraph, but that barely whets the appetite. So the idea of writing a People magazine or Entertainment Weekly style 14 paragraph, 20 paragraph story on them with a set bed of information, but really going to try and capture some of the character of the person, that had a lot of appeal to me. And that's where we got Anthology Magazine, Antholozine, right? And then I started playing with form in that Mary Sandrovani, and I was in Author, or Scares That Cares, but now it's called Author Cares. I was in one of her classes, and she said that the best parts of every story tend to be horror. Think of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. The horror elements are what make that story. And it goes on and on. You could really make a long list of, oh, yes, there's another horror bit.
Well, I agree. I've always said that, or I've heard said many times, that horror is the flavor you can add to any story. And you can add a lot of it or a little of it.
Right.
But it gives it the spice to keep it going.
And that became the linchpin for where I wanted to go with this magazine, or this antholozine, really. It's like that. Looks like a candy, chews like a gum, looks like a book, reads like a magazine.
And
So
then tasty too.
I wanted to stretch the definition of horror. What is horror? By exploring the subgenres. And both of you were so key in showing me, yeah, I can do that. And we're going to look tonight on two. And the very first thing we put out, Scream Antholozine, it was a Christmas kind of a teaser. It's really, really thin. It's called Come All Ye Faithless. And there's only about 4 or 5 stories in there. Alex, you have a story, Believe, in there. And you donated. You let me republish The Reindeer Game. And both stories help show what I'm talking about as far as horror, the hybrid horror with another subgenre in there. Believe is a crime story with some horror elements, right? That's Alex's story. But The Reindeer Game, you have to read it to believe it.
All right.
So we're going to turn the reins over. See what I did?
Yeah, I'm going to try and forget you did that. But go.
You can edit that out.
Yes, please edit it out. We're going to turn it over to Teal to give us just a little taste of The Reindeer Game, which is in Come All Ye Faithless from Scream Antholozine.
I should be wearing a fedora and a trench coat, but just imagine.
There's a hint.
The Reindeer Game. Murder is an ugly crime in any climate. When it happens in the picture postcard beauty of the snowy north, it seems particularly grotesque. Cities near the Arctic Circle are usually quiet places, even as the holidays approach. They are full of folks who've elected to leave the hustle and bustle of down south cities, or who work for old Nick himself in one of the satellite shops that make the toys for the big day, which was only a week away. Most people and elves, and even the wildlife, go about their business peacefully, living the cycle of the seasons with nothing amiss. When they don't, I get called in to set things right. I'm a cop. My name's Christmas, Joe Christmas. My boss is Captain Kringle. My partner is Kenny Krampus. Yep, one of the big hairy Christmas demons that work for the big guy now. Sort of a Yeti with an attitude. But Kenny's okay for a good partner, even if he's almost twice my size. We were working the serious crimes division out of Moose Jaw Precinct when we got the call, a 10:02. Grandma deceased. Possible crime.
That is so fantastic. And again, there's 2 or 3 different genres blended in there seamlessly. And that's the kind of thing I wanted to explore with Scream Antholozine. You have Christmas Story, right? You have outrageous characters, but then it's a crime noir mystery.
It's a solvable crime. The clues are there.
That's right.
It's a fair play mystery.
Actually, what I liked about it also is, at least I'm hearing one other genre in there, and that's fantasy.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, it's really a nice blend. It's almost like a really good daiquiri.
Teal James Glenn, he writes daiquiris.
In fact, they call him the Hickory Daiquiri dog.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's another one I can edit out later.
This is going to be a really short episode.
You knew the job was dangerous when you took it, Fred.
Oh, right. Boy, he's got me with Super Chicken now, right? Super Chicken.
So let's talk about The Reindeer Game. Now, it was published before.
Yes, it's actually published in a Christmas anthology.
There you go. Yes. And like each volume of the Scream Antholozine has a different theme, is fit very well in Come All Ye Faithless, a holiday themed hybrid horror exploration. But where did you get the idea to mix all those genres in such a way in The Reindeer Game?
I have a problem. My name is Teel, and I have a problem. I cannot seem to write solidly in one genre if you pinned me down with bolts.
Yeah.
I see things that mix. I have to work very hard. When I've written Westerns, they tend to go weird. When I've written detective stories, I have to work very hard to keep it real world and not fantasy. It just seemed natural. It's true. I was inspired by a song. But I said, if that were to happen, how would it happen?
Right.
But I was very conscious of wanting to make it a fair play mystery. Even when I do stuff that's that has a fantasy element. Like I have a series with Jack Silence, it's a fantasy, urban fantasy sort of thing. They do mysteries. I want to make them real mysteries. It's very important to me that I don't pull it out my butt, that I play fair with the reader. I want them to enjoy it so they can enjoy it on a couple of levels.
Yeah. And you definitely have that with the reindeer game, but you also have it with the Silver Avenger, a Mama Shadows case. And that is in Scream Antholozine, the one with the blue cover. To me, it's called She's the One, but that's not on the cover. Just pure Scream Antholozine. Now, Mama Shadows is a character in a series you have.
Yeah, I pulled it up here. It's Killing Shadows, and then I have another book called Deadly Shadows, which is 2 novellas. It's John Shadows.
Those feature John Shadows.
John Shadows, who was a modern day investigator.
Right.
It's a legacy character. I have a series of novels and short stories with a character called Dr. Shadows.
Right.
Real name Anton Shadow, and the newspapers gave him the name of Dr. Shadows, and he eventually changed it legally. So John was born as Shadows with his last name. But his wife he first meets her before World War II in Manchuria, where she tries to kill him because she's an agent of the Japanese government. She's a kunioshi, which is a female ninja. And during the war, I tend to see my characters from birth to death. I know their whole life when I write a story with them. But during the war, they meet 3 more times, where each time she's on the other side trying to kill him. And after the war, he is assigned by the Office of Strategic Services to work in Japan, in occupied Japan. And she's assigned as his partner by the occupation government. And that's when they fall in love, if they haven't already. It's hard to tell. And eventually get married and have John.
Now,
but she is still a deadly lady.
In this story, the Silver Avenger, she's now Mama Shadows. John is an adult, and Mama Shadows is up there in age.
She's somewhere over 80, maybe approaching 90. And still spry.
She's the star of this story. And could you give us a little feel for that? A little bit of the Silver Avenger.
This is called the Silver Avenger. My tiny gray-haired mother saw a mugging. Worse, it was someone she knew, and so she decided she had to do something about it. It happened like this. Mom, who I call Mama-san to annoy her most of the time, was out walking her tiny squeak beast bonsai. It was on a sunny spring day, and all of Union City, New Jersey seemed to be out on the street. Mom was about 4 blocks from the house, walking down Park Avenue toward the park that overlooked Manhattan. Union City was more blue-collar then than it had been when she and Dad moved there to raise me. But crime was on the upswing of late as well, so some of the people in the street were up to no good. Bonsai was yapping along, anticipating a doggy play date, when Mom saw the attack 2 blocks ahead of her. Mama-san walks with a cane. Even with the dog pulling on the leash, she was not exactly zipping along. With speeding up, she did not get to the fallen victim until the 3 jerks who had knocked the old lady down to the ground, stole her purse, kicked her in the head, and were long gone. The victim of the pointless, vicious attack was a Honduran grandmother who often exchanged recipes with my own mother. I was as frail-looking as any little mama-san. There was no reason and no point to the thugs having assaulted her, barely worth the purse. Mom held the other woman's hand while they waited for the police to respond. Another witness had called them, and she seethed. And my mom could give seminars on holding on to anger and making use of it. Mama-san Shadows was not one to accept things she did not like, and she did not like seeing a defenseless old woman savaged. She sent the woman, Giuliano, off with a promise to visit the hospital and inform the woman's family, and stayed behind to answer responding police officers' routine questions. "Mrs. Anton Shadows," she said, but her eyes were not looking at the cop. She was looking over the ground where the attack occurred. She focused on a tiny pool of blood from her friend's head, and she seethed. The officer, who copied down her information, towered over her Dominion form. He was clearly bored with the process of being a cop at that point, but pressed on because He was fresh from the academy. First name? He asked without looking up. Undead. She was annoyed that the rookie did not recognize the name Shadows, but before he could piss her off more, the sergeant stepped in. That's all right, Burton, the older policeman said. I'll finish here. Sorry, Mrs. Shadows. He is new. He tried to smile, but Mom was not having any of it. What are you doing wasting time here with me instead of going to the horrible thugs who did this horrible thing? Bonsai was running around the policeman's legs, but any time the police officer moved, the dog would run behind Mom, pop his head out. Yeah, they both ignored him. We have to make sure who did this first, ma'am, the cop said with great patience, obviously having heard that Mom was a force in the community. Even though I can guess. Guess? There's been a rash of these kinds of robberies, thug actions, as you say, attacking older women, pushing robberies, snatched and grabs outside of supermarkets at night, that sort of thing. This is the first time they've been bold enough to do it in the daylight, and the first time with a witness like yourself. If you know who they are, legally, we don't know, ma'am. We suspect, but no one has seen them who will testify. We think it's a local gang, but you have seen them, and he left it hanging, hoping my little mother would leap to her civic duty, say she would look at the logbook. Mom had other plans. My eyes are not so good, she said in a suddenly meek voice, and affecting a shy attitude. I only see a blur when Juliana was knocked down. 3 blurs, really. It was all bullshit, of course. Mom was proud of not needing glasses for her fine work, but she was good at milking her age to look helpless when she wanted to. So the cop let her go. The sergeant promised to keep the extra patrols in the area to have a community liaison check on Mom later. Thank you, she said, acting flustered. I have to go home to call my son. Then Mom headed straight back to home with a disappointed puppy trailing her. Jonathan, she said to me on the phone, I want you to come home right now and do some things with computer. That was all I could get out of her on the phone, and from the tone of her voice, I could tell that somebody was going to be in trouble. Even though I maintained a couple apartments and various cover identities in a safe house in Manhattan, the Victorian 3-story house in Union City was still home. I still use my dad's old office to interview potential clients most of the time. Mom, I said, when she met me at the front door, will you please tell me what the hell is important that I had to rush out here? Language! She snapped and whacked me on the leg with a cane while Bonsai scolded me with a series of squeaks. Then she proceeded to tell me about the mugging. Why didn't you tell a cop what you saw? You know you could describe those creaks down to the buttons on their shirt. She gave me her liquid oxygen cold stare. But when it did not freeze me to death, she pulled out a sheet of rice paper where she'd done Sumi brush drawings. 3 drawings. Actually, images of the bad guys. 2 were comic book-like cartoons of 2 guys' faces, and the 3rd was a sketch of a unique leather jacket. This is not a matter for the police. I need you to do computer and find them. She was packing a basket with some soup and fruit. She issued my marching orders. I have to get to the hospital, and Juliana will need things from home, so I'll get her keys from her to get them. The police, I began, will have silly questions and take too long. You can use contacts to find out the name of the gang and the police think they belong to, then get pictures of the members, and I know how to do research, Mama-san. I used a nickname for her that she hated and got a whack with the cane for my trouble. I'd be home and make bulgogi for dinner. Take the meat out. She was out the door before she saw me smile. Her offer of my favorite Korean dinner was her way of paying me back for finding the goons for her. And I'll leave it there.
Oh, excellent. I wanted to say a quick hello to Marc Abbott.
Hey, Mark.
I have to unmute him, which I'm trying to do now. Hold on there, Mark.
How about that?
There you go.
There you go. Marc Abbott, great to see you.
Right.
We're going to be able to focus on you in a couple of minutes. We're just going to wrap up Teel in a minute. He's got to run.
Right over the
But
head.
Teel, thank you for giving us a good taste of Mama Shadows and the Silver Avenger. The thing that I want to say is that was the calm part of the story.
Yes. You do not ever want to piss Mama off. As he says it in the novel at one point, when he got in trouble, his mother gave an alternative. He could either go and enlist in the Marines or go to train with his uncle in Japan, who she trained with. And she always said he took the coward's way. He went in the Marines.
Yeah, there you go. Teel, why Mama Shadows? Why this story? I'll tell you in a minute why it rang so true with me and why I wanted to include it. But talk to me about how this story came to be.
Can I do one thing just before you do that? Before you answer it, I just wanted to let everybody know, because again, people are watching and they got a little bit of the intro of Teel, but I just want everybody to know Marc is also a writer. He has also contributed to the anthology that we are discussing. And thank you for being patient there. And by the way, watch the dog behind you. It's really very hard.
That's a picture of his alter ego.
Yeah, I mean, have you fed him? I just want to check in.
That is a teaser for what's to come, Marc.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're okay, but anyway, okay. So Teel, you're going to answer.
Actually, Mama-san came about because I had a friend, Jerry Kokich, whose mother was Iva, and they used to call her Iron Iva. She was all of about 4'11", and she had been the originator of Oklahoma and what was the other one on Broadway, and she was the understudy for both parts. And one night, she had to go on in the afternoon for one show and the evening for the other show as the lead and dancer in it back in the 40s.
Wow.
And which is why they changed the rule that you can't understudy two different shows, because they would have been in real trouble if the train hadn't made it in from Philly in time for the night show for the other one. But in her 90s, she was still making films, still living on her own, and still getting around. She had trained, she was in the Joffrey Ballet. And at one point she was on the road in Oklahoma and she sprained her ankle, but they were like on the road. So she just wrapped it. And for 4 weeks, she danced on a bad sprained ankle every night and never missed a performance in her entire career. And she was Iron Iva. And when I was thinking about John Shadows, I'd already written a story about Dr. Shadows meeting Undine. And I said, this is the woman who's going to be his wife. If she's going to be his wife, she's going to be around later on. I said, there you go. And the idea of a legacy hero whose father was a hero and he had to be one and tried to avoid it for 10 years and finally took over the family business. So that's where that came from. It was based very much on a real person.
One of the reason why this story excited me to include in Soul Scream Antholozine.
I want to say salsa, don't you?
I did, but I'm not gonna. Is because again, I always am interested in hybrid horror, and there's no other story that I've found that talks with as much fun and as much seriousness about elder abuse and elder victimization. And for an elder to be able to make a statement about that, a very dynamic statement, was important. Yeah,
it's important for me to expand what people think of as heroes. Yeah. Not all heroes are 30-year-old guys or 22-year-old slim women.
Right.
And I think that we need more older characters. We need more heavy characters. We need more disabled characters, right, where the age, the weight, or the disability have nothing to do with their heroics, because they're just the condition of their life. Yeah. And I try to do that with a number of my stories. This was an original for this, by the way. This was first printing for this.
Yes, that was.
Eventually will end up hopefully in a collection with John Shadows stories, but
that would be really cool. But it was exciting to have it in here as a first printing. And as we went along, I found more and more stories were being sent my way that were favorites or personal. I had a personal space in their hearts from the authors, but they hadn't found a home yet. And Soul Scream wound up becoming some of that too. Which
I ask if that also is a perfect segue into Marc?
No, Marc's got a whole different area of Soul Scream.
Okay.
And we're going to get to that in a minute. I think we should say thanks to Teel. It was really great of you to come on tonight. And again,
thank you guys.
I am forever indebted for helping us launch Soul Scream with your great writing. And thank you for being here tonight too.
Yeah.
And I cede the floor to Mr. Abbott, who I first met over a lightsaber many moons ago.
Oh, that sounds like a story in and of itself.
If you think I have a good background, this guy's got it too. All right, gentlemen, I will see you on the other side.
Peace.
Yeah. And
Thanks,
whatever
Teal.
planet you'll be on that time. Yes.
You never know. All right, take care.
Peace.
Take care, Teal.
All right, Alex Simmons, you are in for a treat.
Am I?
You get to meet Mr. Marc Abbott. Marc, I'm going to read from your
His
biographical information, if you don't mind. No, but I am concerned that I am not going to do justice to all of your stuff. So if I miss something, please fill me in. Marc L. Abbott is a Brooklyn native whose work includes The Hoogie Party and ATM, and the Stardust Express. You're going to have to fix that pronunciation for me. Etienne, sorry. He's the co-author of Hell at the Brooklyn T and Hell at the Way Station, the 2-time African-American Literary Award-winning horror anthology. His horror short stories are featured in Hell's Heart, Hell's Mall, Even in the Grave, and the Bram Stoker-nominated horror anthologies, The Empire State of Fright, and Under Twin Suns, alternate histories of the Yellow Sign. He is a Moth Stories Slam and Grand Slam Storyteller winner and an award-winning actor. Find out more about him at www.whoismarclabbott.com.
Dag.
How'd I do?
You did good.
All right.
Yeah, I want to ask, did he have to come looking so sharp?
Marc always looks sharp.
I mean, he said, I'm in a sweater. This guy's got a tie, this black shirt, a jacket.
Tell you what, if you see pictures of Marc Abbott sleeping, it's a tuxedo. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
So
that was for the benefit of people who are listening to the audio version of this. This brother is dressed tight.
That's just an everyday occurrence. That's
in Marc's life.
Yeah. Marc and I, we worked together just over a year ago at the Barnes & Noble reading that we put on with the New York chapter's horror writers. It was Barnes & Noble in Jersey. And that is one of the areas that was like the birthplace of Soul Scream Antholozine, because we had 10 writers that night, and one after the other was just fascinating. Very different styles, very wide range of what was covered. And that's where Soul Scream Antholozine started taking shape. I wanted to celebrate how wide an umbrella or a tent horror gives to other genres. Come on in, we'll mix it with you. And one of the things I was hoping for was that we'd have what I might term some foundational horror, because all of us cut our teeth on vampires and werewolves and things like that. But again, Soul Scream Antholozine is about hybrid horror. How was that going to be handled? And my prayers were answered with Marc L. Abbott, because he sent me I'm sorry, I want to make sure I don't mispronounce, A Marked Man, not the A Marked Man, which is a very modern take on very classic heroes. So what we'd like to do, Marc, is let you cut loose a little bit on a Marked Man, if that's cool with you, for a little bit, and then want to talk to you about your view of these seminal, iconic characters. Does that work with you, sir?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine with me.
Cool. Are you ready to read a little bit of Marked Man?
Yes. Yeah. I have it brought up here on the screen. So
Gosh. Do you feel like we need to set anything up, or you want to just...
I'll set it up, because where I'm starting from in the story is where things are really heating up.
Excellent. You gave us permission to reprint this story in the Blue Soul Scream Antholozine.
Yes.
So everybody is in that. Take it away, Marc, and we'll talk on the other side.
All right. So this story is called A Marked Man, and where we're beginning, our two characters, Alexander and girlfriend, are going out to dinner. She has been away. Candice has been away for a while, and she's returned to New York. And this is around the time of the sinking of the Titanic. This has happened. This is sometime after that. And Candice and Alexander have this very unique relationship. They don't see each other often, and she disappears for long periods of time. So she's now back home, and they go out to dinner, and she's about to find out something Alexander has been keeping from her. Alexander raised his hand and motioned to the waiter that he wanted the check. He reached into his jacket pocket to get his wallet as Candice returned to the table and took her seat across from him. "This oak room is wonderful," Candice said. "They really know how to treat their guests here." "I figured you'd like it," Alexander said. "I considered canceling the reservations." "Why?" "After what happened earlier, I figured you may not want to go to dinner. And since you had to go see your brother, I thought you would feel rushed to meet up." "My brother ended up coming to see me, so he saved me the trip. As for what happened earlier, it's already forgotten." "So I haven't done anything wrong then?" Alexander said. "No, I have no issues with your company," Candice said. "I like you." Alexander smirked while Candice smiled. The waiter placed the check down on the table, and Alexander told him to wait. He glanced at the check and placed his money on the plate. "Where to, my dear?" Alexander said. "A stroll to the park?" "Why not?" Candice stood and turned to her right. She locked eyes with a very beautiful fair-skinned woman, dressed all in black, with a large hat with feathers sticking out of it. She didn't break her stare while she drank her coffee. Candice nodded politely to her, and the woman's eyes shifted to Alexander. Candice followed her gaze to Alexander buttoning his suit jacket. "Something wrong?" he said. Candice's eyes slowly moved back to the woman in black. Alexander followed her eyes and saw the woman staring at him. His smile fell. He took hold of Candice's arm. "Do you know that woman?" Candice said. "A story for another time," Alexander said. "Come, let's go for that walk." Candice nodded and walked past Alexander, and he paused for a moment and stared at the woman in black, and she smiled briefly, then attended to her dessert. A light rain had started when Alexander and Candice left the Oak Room for Central Park. Mixing with the soft glow of the gaslight in the tall lamps, the night felt both gothic and romantic. They walked in silence along a cobblestone path until they reached a large fountain surrounded by benches and hanging gas lamps. Alexander wiped off a bench with his handkerchief, and they sat alone quietly for a moment, and Alexander broke the silence. "During dinner, you said you carve out time once a month to go out of town. Is it business?" "No, not really. It's more a necessary retreat." "Medical reasons?" "No," Kansas hesitated. "Hunting." "You hunt?" "Only with my family," she said. "Fascinating. You're just full of surprises. What kind of animals do you hunt for?" Candice hesitated. "Before I answer that, I need to ask you about the woman watching us at the restaurant." "Oh, her." Alexander grew pale. "Why do you look like someone's walked over your grave?" "It's complicated." "Is she an ex-girlfriend?" I asked because the way she was staring, it was as if she was bothered to see us together. "I don't think you should give her a second thought," he said. "But I do," she said. "My brother seems to believe that you are a marked man, meaning that you're cursed in some way." Alexander shifted nervously in his seat. "Candice, you're talking crazy. Cursed? You don't actually believe in such things." "I'm an open-minded woman, Alexander. My family has had dealings with certain types of, how do I put this, individuals who like to bring harm to others. And if that is the case with this woman, I need to know, not only for my safety, but for yours as well. She placed her hand on top of his. Who is she? Alexander grabbed the bridge of his nose and exhaled. You know what? You'll find out sooner or later. He turned to her. Her name is Raven. We were involved for 2 years, but it's completely over between us. Another woman. Mind if I ask what happened? A vicious, jealous streak and a dark secret I discovered about her, Alexander's. She didn't like any woman spending time with me. She even threatened to kill one of my coworkers she saw having lunch with me. She told every female friend I had that I was hers. You get the point. Jesus. What was the secret, Candice? I can't tell you. Why not? I promised I would never speak of it. But what I can say is that she is not the kind of person you want to cross swords with. If you've had experience in dealing with certain types of individuals, you'll understand my meaning. I believe I do, she said. What else can you tell me? She started to stalk me. She would watch me from distance at first, and then she left threatening notes under my apartment door. Eventually, I contacted the police. Candice leaned in to him, intrigued. Did they arrest her? She disappeared after that. I hadn't seen her until tonight, Alexander said. Did she ever make good on her threats? Candice said. I only asked so that I can be on my guard. Now that she's us together, she may try something. Alexander looked into her eyes. I don't think so. Candice leaned in and kissed Alexander on the cheek. I'm not. I can handle myself. Let's change the subject. Now that we've officially gone on our second date, how about making the next one a getaway? Alexander said. An overnighter. Candice shifted in her seat. You don't waste time. Doesn't have to be overnight. We can make a day trip someplace not New York City. What do you... Candice stopped talking abruptly. She turned her attention to the far end of the fountains, her gaze fixed on the dark path that led into the park. What's wrong? Alexander said. I thought I heard someone coming. You think she followed us? The silhouette of a person approaching them in the darkness appears. A small orange light appearing to be floating in midair, then went out. A second later, a puff of smoke bloomed quickly, then faded. And Raven stepped into the light. She took another drag off of her cigarette. Good to see you again, Alexander. Raven turned to Candice. I don't believe I've had the pleasure. Raven Lockwood, pleased to make your acquaintance. Candice Bridgeport. Candice stood, charmed. Raven sized up Candice and smirked. Yes, I'm sure you are. I'm sorry, Candice said. I take it you two enjoyed dinner? Alexander and I ate there often. A lot of fond memories we have there. Am I correct? Raven said. Alexander slowly stood. Raven, you and I agreed to go our separate ways. No, I said, let's talk, and you called the police on me. After you started stalking me, I only came after you because you never gave me the chance to explain my secret to you, Raven said. It doesn't matter if it were true or false. The bottom line is that we're through, Alexander said. I moved on. Rather quickly, too, Raven said. What does that say about you? Excuse me, Raven, is it? Candice waved her hand and got Raven's attention. I think Alexander made it perfectly clear he doesn't wish to have anything more to do with you. Candice, don't get in the middle of this. I'll handle her, Alexander said. I'm already in the middle of it, Alexander, Candice said. Really? Because no one is speaking to you. It would be in your best interest to keep your mouth shut and stay out of this, Raven said. Candice gasped. How dare you speak to me that way? You don't know me. Raven ignored her. If you truly want us to go our separate ways, you need to take a walk with me. We can put final touches on putting an end to all this and put it behind us. 2 minutes is all I need. You must think me mad, Alexander said. Go off with you so you can do that thing with your eyes to me? I would rather live with what I know than have you in my head manipulating me. Alexander, be honest. You would rather mend fences with me than to be with that street urchin next to you. Look who's calling. Look who's talking. Wait, Candice said. Bench. Interesting choice of words coming from someone gallivanting around town with my bow, Raven said. She reached out and felt Candice's hair. Such soft hair, like the kind found in a common whore's head in a brothel. You worked one often to know that? Candice said. Raven closed her hand around Candice's hair and pulled it hard. Candice screamed, reached back and dug her nails into Raven's wrist. Raven quickly let go as Candice spun around and slapped her hard across the face. Stop it, the both of you, Alexander said. She started it, Candice said. Childish bitch, Raven said. Enough of this, Raven. I don't want to see you anymore. Walk away knowing that I have no intentions of ever speaking about what I know, Alexander said. Yes, that's not going to work for me, Raven said. Raven reached out and seized Alexander by the arm. Candice immediately lunged for her. Raven stepped to the side and quickly grabbed Candice by the throat. She whipped her around, pulled Candice close to her face, parted her lips, and exposed 2 long, sharp canines. Bloody hell, Candice said. You are the one who marked him. Candice pushed her to the ground and hissed. Her eyes shimmered with red tint in the lamplight. Candice scrambled to her feet and started to run. Raven's movements were a blur. She rushed to Alexander, pushed him into the bench, then went after Candice. Bottom of Candice's shoe slid on the wet ground, and Raven ran up behind her and shoved her forward, causing her to lose her footing completely to fall to the ground. Raven walked up behind her and seized her by the back of her neck, dragging Candice behind her. Raven took her to the hedges of the long walkway and threw her body over it into the darkness. I'll come back and deal with you in a moment, Raven said. Moving in a blur, Raven was back next to Alexander. She exposed her fangs and he withdrew from her. I told you, no other woman will ever have you. You're mine and mine alone. I have marked you for life, and there's nowhere you can go that I will not find you. I've avoided you for 2 years. I've allowed you to come and go, hoping time would make you come to your senses. Instead, you align yourself with that common street whore. I won't have it. Why me? Alexander winced in pain. Because I always get what I want, and said. And Raven started to reach for him and made a gulping sound. Her face contorted into a look of pain. She reached over her shoulder, clawing her upper part, and turned her back to Alexander and saw the handle of a dagger protruding from her back. Something whistled through the air, and Raven buckled forward. She reached down and grabbed the handle of a second dagger that was lodged in her stomach. She pulled it out quickly, dropping it to the ground. She staggered sideways, and Alexander saw the handle was carved, resembling a wolf. From the darkness, Candice appeared holding a dagger in one hand and a crucifix in the other. She held it out in front of her as she flung the last dagger into Raven's breast, and it found its mark and sank in. Candice? Alexander screamed. Stay there, my love. This is between us girls. Candice closed the gap between her and Raven. Looks like you picked the wrong man to stalk. Vampire. I'll leave it there.
Alex? See what I mean? Oh man, that's great stuff.
Thank you.
And I have to both apologize and defend myself, because when I was introducing this part, I said it's a very modern take on these classic heroes. And of course, if you listen and you hear the references to Gaslight and all that stuff, it is I would call it semi-period piece, right? Maybe not as far back as Dracula and those
No.
kind of things. Still not in today's, but the energy with which you write, it transcends a feel of a period piece. It has the trappings, but it has the energy of, especially from that point forward, of what I took away, which was that modern feel. Talk to me about these characters and Marked Men and what other tales you may have told with these characters. Why them? Why this take on these classic character types?
These guys were part of it was a really short piece that I had originally written. And Candice was actually something else in the original piece. And then when I revisited the story, I decided to stretch it out a little bit more and change the dynamics of who she is and what she does. I always like I've always had a love for the vampire hunter, and ideas that one could pick up on them without them exposing themselves, kind of thing. Early on in the story, we get an idea of who Candice's family is and what they do and why they are they're not technically, I wouldn't say they are completely human, which is why they can pick up on vampires. But I wanted to go in a different direction with that idea of, notice that her daggers have wolves on them.
Right.
So it's the old idea that the vampire and the wolf and that struggle between the two, and being able to use their senses to pick up on that kind of thing. So that's what I was looking at when I changed the story, when I changed the dynamics of it. I don't know if I would ever go deeper into these characters because some stories I found when writing short fiction, some stories are really a one and done. They're perfectly gift wrapped where they give you enough information at the beginning that you fall in love with the characters. And as a writer, you don't want to overplay them. They may be perfect for this story, but if I try to expand the story, I might lose the charm of the characters and what they can do. So after I finished reworking this story to where it is now, I was like, you know what? I think this is good. And I don't want to turn it into a whole series of stories about these characters or anything.
It definitely feels like a fully realized and layered world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the impression. That's probably one of the reasons why I had the impression that there was more here and more there. But definitely knowing when the story is enough it's a key acquired skill, and a lot of our audience are ascending or emerging writers.
Mm-hmm.
So can you speak for them a little bit about what you know when you know that one and done is enough, or when there might be more there? How does that work for you?
Usually when I start out, let's start here. It depends on what I'm writing, what I've been asked to write. Usually when it's a short story, I've been asked to write one. I'm usually given a theme or something like that. So I walk into it knowing, okay, it's going to be contained. It's not going to be something that I'm going to expand on. And I'm good with that. Usually I know when the story where it's not going to go any further than where it's gone is somewhere right before we get to the climax. I usually can pick up on that. And I'm like, if I keep going with this and it gets longer than it needed to be, then I'm going into novella territory.
Word.
I'm moving away from the short story and I'm slowly going there. And sometimes that happens because I may put too much background information.
Right.
Because with short fiction, particularly the type of story you're going to tell, you have to give enough background so that the readers are invested in the characters. But as most writers know, when you start writing, when the juices start flowing, sometimes you can't stop.
Right.
And that pen or that computer just keeps going, and you would just put too much in there. And sometimes, be honest, sometimes if you have too much, you can look at it and go, you know what? I can take a chunk of this and use it for a different story over here.
Right.
Maybe later down the line, but maybe not with these characters. So I usually know once I get close to the climax whether or not this is a one and done. It has been very rare. I can't even think of a story that I've written where I felt, you know what? I think I'm going to continue this
Right.
somewhere down the road. And I think, I'll be honest, the hardest piece I had to write was for Under Twin Suns.
Yeah.
Because I was piggybacking off of Robert Chambers.
Sure.
That was the homework assignment
Right,
that I
right,
was
right.
given. And the direction I decided to go in, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting to just be contained in somebody else's world and not my own.
That's wild.
I wanted to
Yes.
jump in there for a moment. One of the things that I appreciated about the tale, and this is, I'm about to preface my own remark with, I'm not trying to make a societal statement here, but it was interesting to watch the roles flip to where the victim, if you will, is male. Because quite often in these type of vampire tales, it's the woman who's become the victim of the vampire who keeps coming back or stalking them and that sort of thing. And in this, I had some suspicion that the young lady he was talking to, Candice, was that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Candice was special in some other way than just a wonderful person he's dating or potentially dating. But it was nice to watch that once you realize who the characters were, the three positions, to watch that whole thing just shifted to where he's the one who's being stalked. He's the one that's in danger. And for that brief moment when it looks like Raven is in total control and everybody's going to go down before her, and then to have Candace strike back, it was like, oh, wow, this is a nice shift. I like how this looks and I like how this feels. So I just wanted to comment on that. In that way, it is definitely not a piece from the past,
Mhm.
because in the past, it would have always been the woman who was the victim.
Yeah.
So I really like that approach and I like that feel. And again, the energy that Chris mentioned is very palpable there.
Thank you. I like to do that every once in a while, is flip the script and not, because a lot of these stories, it's the priest or it's the strong, the strapping guy that lives down the lane is, I'm on my way. And I think when I first wrote this in its original form, I was like, now what would happen if the guy didn't have control? What happens in the situation where I originally thought maybe he would be a cad, like he was just dating women for the sake, and this one woman had been stalking him and now he was paying the price for his behavior. And then I guess in my writing him, I felt sorry for him because it was one of those things where I was like, he's not a bad guy. He's trying to find somebody that he can connect with. And he meets this woman who he thinks, hey, but then when he finds out that, oh, she's an actual monster, now it's, how do you get out of this situation? And she's just determined. We don't know. I think that's the one thing I leave up in the air is, what did he do to Raven that made her want him so bad that for 2 years, this woman has been stalking him? And then at one point, just stalking him from the shadows, not even
In front
where
of
he could see her.
Mhm.
So I still don't know what he did.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say that as an audience member, I'm sitting here and she took the role of the abuser that you hear about to where, yeah, they could be with, you don't like what this woman you're with is, go date somebody else. No, they're in a power position and they are getting something out of that controlling factor over this person, over having total control over this individual. Is something that they are getting from that relationship. And so to some degree, when I was listening to you, I wasn't so much caught up in why she did it, because some part of me was going, she's really getting off. I'm feeling she's the ultimate power in this situation. She saw Candice as no threat. She certainly doesn't see him as Alexander as a threat. By the way, thank you very much for naming your character after me. But actually, nobody is as badass as I am in this particular situation. And then boom, the tables get turned. And it's not a dramatic, oh, like she doesn't get to do a soliloquy at that moment. It's suddenly, oh, there's a problem here. I took her as absolutely a power junkie and an abuser. And because she even says, you even have her say, I let you alone for a while.
Yeah.
But I always knew where you were. I always knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
The dialogue and also some of the actions just show that she takes it for granted that she is the uber being in this situation. She even grabs Candice and drags her behind her like she's nothing and flings her away and I'll take care of you after I take care of this bit of non-business. And out of the shadows come the turning of the tide, which again, it's that energy that I love. And I was so grateful because when I asked everyone, I didn't really know what I was going to get. And this fulfilled an area that I felt was really needed. And then there was so many more layers within the story. So I wanted to thank you for that. And people can read the whole story in those Scream Antholozine right here. It's really well worth the trip. I do want to ask you one other thing. Writer of stories, but you are also a teller of tales in public.
Yeah.
And a teacher
Yes.
in the classroom. 3 completely different storytelling energies. And I was wondering if you could talk about or compare and contrast what you need for each of them, because we learn, or what you learn about storytelling from each of them. Because again, a lot of our audience come here to hear a little bit about something that'll fuel them going on. And I think you're in such a unique position to talk about all 3. And I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Oh,
Easy questions here, just easy.
Just what's your favorite color?
So I'll take a step backwards on something. I fell into storytelling, oral storytelling, by accident. It wasn't something that I was pursuing. And I just felt, I love the idea of being able to express my words verbally. The written word, you're really caught up in your own head when you're writing. And it's a lonely kind of thing, except for I often tell people you got to be a little schizophrenic to hear all these little voices in your head, because you got all these different characters you got to speak for and talk to.
Sure.
But when you're on stage or I'm performing at a storytelling event, it's a different audience. It's people are drawn in by listening to you. You have an opportunity to be in front of people and bring them in a different way. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, because you get an opportunity, because no story is ever told. See, here's the thing. When you write a story, and like I read it, I may leave out a couple of words here and there, because as writers, when you read your own work, you're like, so dumb. But when you're telling a story, it's never told the same way twice.
True.
It's not a big fish story, but it definitely, when you're depending on the audience, you may tell it fast, you may tell it slow, You may want to linger on a few things. So you get the opportunity to try storytelling in different fashions. In the classroom is much different. I teach writing to teenagers. So
Been
the
there,
hard,
suffered that.
so the hard part is keeping their interest.
Sure.
Therein lies the trick, is they don't want to be there. And then I have to find ways to engage them so that they are interested in what I'm saying. And I know that oftentimes when I talk to them, we'll talk a little bit about what we have to talk about during the day, but then how do you write? We're getting into fiction soon.
Right.
And it's often the question of how do you tell a story? And that gives me the opportunity to do two things at the same time, show them how to write one and then story tell. And so they get both sides of the fence. They get to hear it first before they get to sit down and write it. And so often I tell them, think about writing as a conversation. You walked into a room, you heard somebody talking about a topic you're familiar with, and you walked over and then you interjected into it, and then you start telling your story. I said, that's one of the best ways I can tell you of how to approach writing. Approach your characters like old friends. These are people. I told one of my classes recently, we were talking about editing.
Mhm.
And I told them, I said, I want you to think of yourself. I said, I have said over here, we're going to edit, and you guys who are going to write. I said, no, the writers, I want you to think of your work as your child. I said, you conceived this idea, you birthed it, you brought it into this world. It is your own, and no one will ever dare tell you there's something wrong with your child. I said, now comes the editor, who's basically the person across the street that's about to tell you, you know what's wrong with your kid? Let me tell you what I saw them doing, and start picking your baby apart. And I said, the first thing you're going to have to learn is not to completely defend. You have to listen to what the editor tells you, because the editor technically is in it for your best interest. And you, as the parent, now have to step back and listen to what you don't want to hear.
Mhm.
And I said, and what you're going to do is you're going to start defending your work right after I tell you this. And sure enough, when they started working and I could hear the editors like, this sentence here didn't make sense. See, you're not understanding what I was trying to say. I was like, there it goes.
There you go.
I was like, you're defending your kid again. Let it go. Let the editor tell you. So that's one of the like kind of neat nuances I teach them
Yeah.
when it comes to writing.
It's a good analogy especially if you're just starting to work in critique groups or with editors, to discipline yourself to say, okay, open myself up to how other people are seeing this thing.
Yeah.
And what can I do with it?
I think it's also cool because Chris often says, we both do, but Chris often says it much more than I do, about reading your work aloud in order to hear it and to really get the sense of the cadence, the rhythm, the voices of the characters. Are they individual enough and all that sort of thing? And this is just another example of that. In telling that story, you can really live the character parts and really get a much stronger connection to them. And then certainly if you've written the piece, now you've had that experience, but now that character's come to life in you,
Right.
you learn even more and then go back to the manuscript and start finessing.
And we've all three of us are in the classroom. Alex teaches at the New York Film Academy, besides everything else he does. I had to amend that rule with students to read out loud. I had to amend it to read out loud. You're getting paid a hell of a lot of money to do, because when I first said read out loud, they were going like this. I thought that's not going to help you at all. If you got cash on the line, that's a different story. Well, how much cash? That's why I said a hell of a lot. You determine how much a hell of a lot is, And what would be the threshold dollar amount that would make you put heart and soul in there and put character in there? And that was an effective difference, because they started catching all these things, right? That you and I and Alex definitely knows about, putting some drama into the writing, some life into the reading of your own writing. You catch, oh, too many words here, or this, so those little things. And then you start layering in, which was one of the key pleasures I had tonight, just listening to you. You can hear all the just nuances of characterization in there. That's it. You can only learn that by doing for a while. It's a challenge to teach teenagers to do that in a few short weeks.
I would love to, and obviously, Marc, I don't know you. You've worked with Chris. You've just met me, but I would love to invite you back for another episode where we could talk more about your storytelling and your writing experiences combined. Because I just getting this taste of it, I realized, there's so many places we could go with this, and that would really, again, be useful to us, but most assuredly to our listeners. And also, I'm officially also the clock watcher, so I have to make sure that we're going to ring this in. So I want to give Chris a chance to say thank you and give you a chance to offer up any last thoughts. But would you consider at some point coming back?
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so that invite,
for
sure. So, okay, Chris.
No, again, Marc, from the very beginning, you've been very generous with your time, with your creativity. And I am so honored that you agree to be part of this and help with this kind of exploration of form. So I really wanted to thank you again for being you. So thanks, man.
And is there anything you want to say, Marc?
I want to thank Chris for reprinting this story, and it's getting a fresh set of eyes. People are going to really enjoy it. Those who've already read it and enjoy it, and those who are going to pick up the Antholozine.
Antholozine. It's a brand new word. We're good.
Teal's a big fan of that word.
But thank you so much for allowing me to share this story verbally with.
It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And looking forward to have you on again. We'll hear more from Alex this time, and then the next time.
Don't sweat it. So let's remind everybody, it's a wonderful issue of Soul Scream Antholozine. And how do you describe it? It's the one without the subtitle?
Yeah, this is the Led Zeppelin 4 of the Soul Scream Antholozine episode. It's got no title. I always refer to it in my mind that she's the one, but I just wanted the art to take center. And when I first put it out, I didn't know if I was going to get to the others. So I said, let this stand on its own feet, and then we'll subtitle the other ones.
Screaming Skull. Yeah, the Screaming White Skull. Yeah.
That is the Soul Scream, by the way.
Yeah.
There you go. So, yeah.
So pick that up. Absolutely.
Read Alex and read Marc and have fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Again, thank you very much, Marc. Chris, as always, great to see you. Folks, please leave your comments, your questions, and anything else in the comment sections. Yeah. And, as Chris likes to say, press what?
Thumbs up and subscribe. So
there you go.
Don't miss nothing.
That's right. You don't want to miss the thing. Okay. Marc, again, thanks very much. Chris, as always.
Marc, again, thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Peace, everybody.